Hi. So I'm giving a talk about being human on my own, speaking to a computer. So that's all a bit strange, but hopefully it'll be okay. I took this quote, "We shape mud and the mud shapes us," from Surab, who spoke at Clayfest in 2019. It was a brilliant talk. I wasn't even there, but I saw it later. And I really recommend you check it out on YouTube on the eBucky channel. He talked about the mud mind, which is a special way of seeing and interacting with the world. And hopefully that's something I'm going to talk about too. So in the beginning of this story, we make stuff with our hands and our bodies. It might be soil, it might be clay, pigments, it could be art, it could be messages to each other. We probably make pots that we can hold water. We make hearths that hold fire, floors, buildings eventually, and we survive and we thrive. So it goes a long way back. And gradually, the use of soil and earth is woven into stories about creatures and gods and goddesses. And so soil is shaped into animals and we breathe life into it. And sometimes we look at animal homes and take inspiration there, as they've been around a lot longer than we have. Pip doesn't live in an earth nest, but he would like to. He's my dog. Another aspect to this is as we move forward in time, we have these traditions that we almost remember, but, a lot of them are lost along the way, like this woman next to her turf shieling, a seasonal building in the Scottish Islands. A lot of that is forgotten. And so we go elsewhere to Iceland to learn about that technique because that stayed alive longer in Iceland. And the thing about these Icelandic buildings is the way you see history in that piece of turf. So you can tell like a volcanic eruption can be apparent in the colours of the soil, which I just think is incredible. So there's a lot to learn from these biodegradable, malleable materials. But in a way, we have to choose what we want to learn. And so we're kind of choosing what we remember too, because those very malleable, soft, degradable materials are just fragmentary in the record in archaeology. And quite often we don't have time and money to look into them, like this little clay hearth on the left, which is in the Black House on Lewis. And instead, what we tend to remember are monuments and castles and status symbols and, powerful things rather than small domestic transient things. So just to make that contrast here, the monument, this Bronze Age tomb on Orkney, everyone thinks of it as an incredible stone monument, but often clay, soil, different ways of using earth are part of that story. Clay in between the stones to help them move, clay floors where we might see prints of feet, or clay walls with handprints. Those things tend to be hidden away and forgotten. And actually now I'm having fun with different artistic ways of holding on to almost like fossils in clay plasters and playing with this idea of preserving and letting things go. So the old ways, the traditions have so much to show us, and often they're incredibly beautiful and such intelligent use of materials. And we can use that now. We have solutions as well as problems. We sometimes have the answers. So Kevin McCabe making this beautiful clay straw cob stairway in his house in Devon. And teaching, what I like to do with teaching is encourage people to just touch the stuff, to taste it sometimes, because your teeth can tell how large the grains are. They can feel silt, but they can't feel clay. And you can see the grains, the different particle sizes in the mixture. And if you add water, the smell is strong. If it's got organics in it, you smell it. You might hold it to your ear and crush it to hear the different aggregates sort of scraping against each other. And really, for me, that's a good way of knowing if a mortar is a good in a good condition because it makes that noise. You might make a shine with a knife and see how clay rich it is. Very shiny is an indication of clay. No one test tells you the answers, so you need to have lots of tools, lots of ways of responding to the material. Does it crack when you squish it? Can you make a bowl with it? Many different ways of investigating this. And in doing this, it's about reawakening your muscles, reawakening your senses, which again is something pretty ancient. It's the kind of thing we needed when we were out hunting or, looking for wild plants. It's that sort of sensory intelligence that we're trying to get going again. And then other ways of teaching, the old ways of communicating are useful because when you're teaching a big room full of people, you want to get their attention, and you might have some science that you want to share, some experiments like these incredible demonstrations from Crater. It's like you need to be a good storyteller. You need to have a bit of theatre, like a magician, and then people listen, whether they're 5 or 55, whether they're just learning or whether they're an architect and have been doing this stuff for years. Making it accessible and engaging. And another way we can engage with earth, of course, is creativity. Here, a beautiful sgraffito finish done by Athena Steen with a team at Artur in Slovakia. And here's some of my Dorodangos with different clay soils and pigments. So taking those qualities of soil that you saw when I was touching and feeling and really making the most of, if there's clay, I can make it shine. If there's lots of sand, I can scrape and really enjoy the roughness of that material. So aesthetic as well as functional reasons to play with it. And here I am working with old buildings and taking material from the walls to mix again and again and again to make new renders, new blocks for fixing holes and cracks, recycling forever, pretty much. And sometimes we mix the clay soil into beautiful slip liquid clay. Very useful when we want to make something light with fibre like this. This is a little kiln for burning oyster shell to make quicklime, to make other things, another material that can be transformed. And there's a whole other story about clay and lime, but I haven't got time for that today. But here, these teenagers, they learn differently. They are doing an environmental science exam in 2 weeks, but their learning is they come out and make lime. And we talk about lime, and at the same time we talk about clay and what happens when we quarry and what happens with, the process, the industrial process. How does that affect the planet? And by making a little process like this, they really get this stuff, and they are the breath that goes into, they're all lying down, breathing into the fire to make it hot. To go back to the old buildings again. And so often I arrive at a place like this mill in Murray, far away up a glen in the middle of nowhere, a beautiful building with so many stories to tell. But I want to know, how do I fix it? How do I repair this? And almost always the material is right there next to the building, under it quite often. Beautiful, not rich clay at all. In fact, this building had maybe 4 or 5% clay in that floor, but it was at least 150 years old and still looking really good, surviving all that time. So I'm making samples again to try and figure out, well, I've got a brown soil, I've got a grey soil, they're similar but not exactly the same. And then looking so hard at the floor and seeing in that photograph, well, the floor has a grey bit and it has a phase when they use the brown, and there was also coal in the floor in a layer. So why? Is the coal an accident? Is it there on purpose? So many, you've got to be a detective, which is such fun as well. And all of this stuff we can bring to communities and help them understand their heritage, help them understand, the buildings around them in this village in Errol, and also begin to show them about, you can make this yourself. You can make your own park shelter with your hands, with your friends. It's very empowering and engaging. And it's a kind of co-creation, which is a modern way of just saying building, working together to create something bigger that's much more than just us, and feeling part of something bigger. And these guys were on a turf arch. This is an Icelandic example, and it was quick to build, but it really benefited by those two guys locking hands, standing on top of that arch to bed all those pieces of turf together to make them tight. So you can't do that on your own. You have to do that with someone else. So soil has many positive qualities, and I'm sure today people may have talked about how safe it is. Christine here is in love with her Dorodango because she can, it's in her hand. It feels lovely. She can put it on her face and it's smooth. If it's in the walls of a building, it's going to balance the humidity. It's going to take toxic gases from materials that are not so healthy. We even know now that microbes in soil are like antidepressants and can sort of improve the chemicals in our brain, which is just mind-blowing actually. And even to the extent that it can block radiation. So there's many different ways we can benefit from this stuff. It can help us reconnect to nature, of course. Craig here on the right, he really struggled at times to do the building work, but oh my goodness, he was amazing at mixing, and he was finding frogs in the mix. And I mean, what better example of a material where, well, creatures thrive in it and I can thrive in it. And Laura making a decoration on a stove where we can cook together, taking plants that we've grown. It's this sort of holistic way of learning. And, you might be somebody that doesn't enjoy school or, just learns differently. But you may really thrive when you've got earth in your hands, like these girls here on the left, this incredible sort of sea creature scene, not prompted by me at all. It took them 10 minutes to feel comfortable with the mud, and then they just went for it. And these girls on the right, these women on the right, just thriving with making a rocket stove with earth and having a lot of fun. So I think it's a lot about earth, but it's also about just doing things differently. Can we teach children about soil science and storytelling and physical activity and, architecture, geology, archaeology, all these things on a building site with, high-vis vests and soil in their hands? It's about, finding a way to bring all these disciplines together and not fragment things, just to integrate everything in the way we teach and learn. And a great example actually is Base Habitat, where they do these this real sort of experimental, playful learning, and it happens in Crater and at Amoco too. So when we're teaching, we say, well, here's some soil, here's some straw, and the challenge is make a vault, make an arch, and then stand on it while it's wet, and leaving room for failure, leaving room for feeling a bit exposed and, able to help your colleagues and teammates achieve things in little teams or, different ways of doing group dynamics. There's so much fun to be had. And when we work that way and learn that way and play that way, I kind of hope that instead of being an audience, like these folk at the Chelsea Flower Show, sort of gazing at the earth renders that we did, that they, it's not exotic anymore. It's something that they feel they can get their hands on and join in with too. And really, that's kind of me coming to the end now, but just to say that, coming back to the mud, we shape the mud and the mud shapes us. And if we can use every bit of ourselves in that process, in groups, but also with our, our minds, with the theory and the knowledge, and with our hands, with the creativity, with the learning by instinct and intuition, to respond to the diversity in the materials, which allows the diversity in us to shine, then we're going to feel like Woody at the end. And maybe his hummingbird, which he drew many years ago, if that hummingbird can fly, then I think, anything is possible. So thank you for letting me speak. I hope that wasn't too meandering. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed thinking about it. And here is Pip, because Pip always features at the end, gazing over the mountains and finding his way home. Thank you.